Hey, what are you guys doing? We're trying to film a video here and you're playing rock, paper, scissors.
No, we are deciding the sex of the lambs of this year.
You can't decide the sex of the lambs.
Yes, you can. Come on, I want to tell you our research.
Yeah, you're gonna have to explain this to me.
Okay, so, no, seriously. The idea that we have in this experiment was to manipulate the energy and the source of energy on the flushing diet to try to change the outcome of the offspring. The main objective is trying to see the ratio of male and females, but also the change the ovulation rate. So
one of the big questions I commonly get from producers out at extension talks are, how can we perhaps skew the sex ratio of our offspring in our lambing operations? There's some of our producers out there that may want to have more males in their operations, and that would be certainly beneficial for our individuals that have club lamb operations. That would have them to have the ability to have more wethers for the opportunity for show. But on the other hand, also our commercial producers, we know that if we keep our animals intact as ram lambs, especially for some of the lambs that we're producing here in the eastern U.S., those ram lambs will grow quicker than their counterparts as well. So that may be a benefit of why we may want to have more male offspring. On the other side of the spectrum, we may have producers out there that are specifically those that are producing replacement females for replacement operations, whether in their own operation or that's their specific business in the commercial world. And therefore, if we're able to skew it one direction, we should be able to figure out how to skew it in the opposite direction as well. There is research and literature out there that does demonstrate that there are ways that we can manipulate the offspring sex in our animals. One paper in specific talks about PUFAs, or polyunsaturated fatty acids, being added to the diet. Those ewes that were fed a diet that was higher in these PUFA type of fats tended to have more male offspring.
on the other hand, there is a studies conducted from one of our colleagues here at OSU in goats, where it also demonstrate that not just the amount of energy, but the source where the energy comes from can increase the ovulation rate of the animals. So for that, we designed this experiment with 3 treatments. A controlled diet, that it was a high forage, and we use a non-ravage forage. We use soy pods to make it simple for the management. And then that was our control, and we compared with 2 treatments. One where the energy came from corn, and that's where I'm stepping right now. Kosher corn, very typical diets here in this area of the Midwest. And then a diet that was very similar to the control, but we used this polyunsaturated fatty acid, these different type of oils. So there are 3 treatments. We have 9 pens, so we are replicating in 3 pens per treatment when we have 10 animals per use, 10 ewes per pen, sorry. And so they have the same, we are feeding the same amount of energy and protein. So the only difference is that we have here is the source of energy. It could be from forage or the non-ravage forage, the soy pod. It could be energy from starch from the corn, or a little bit of energy from the lipids, the polyunsaturated fatty acid. According to that, these diets are not high-fat diets, okay? So we are trying to use these as a bioactive molecules, not in what we normally think in a human diet, in half-fat diet. They have 1% of the diet, and maybe it could work with something less than that based on the product, the type of fatty acid that they use.
As Dr. Relling also explained, we're taking a look at the effects of flushing as well. It's pretty standard for our producers here in Ohio and the Midwest to go through and flush their ewes or even their does in their feeding operation. What do we mean by flushing? We're simply increasing the plane of nutrition that these females are receiving during the breeding time period. Here we are a couple days before Thanksgiving. We're a little late on our breeding schedule, but I think it's going to work really nice here. Referring back to that paper that you talked about, Dr. Relling, we know that it takes about 10 days. That's kind of our sweet spot in terms of a flushing diet that needs to be provided to these ewes to get optimum performance when it comes to reproduction. However, in our study, it's a little bit different. We're going out to about a month's worth of time in this flushing diet, just so we can ensure that we're going to see the effects of these energy sources.
Mainly, yeah, the time of these molecules, this fatty acid, the polyunsaturated fatty acid, to have a biological effect. It's not just the energy there, but it's more the use of these molecules. So with that, we're going to evaluate we have the 1 month feeding, then we will breed them with specific sires selected by block. We are going to do different ultrasound with the help of our colleague from Columbus, Alvaro Garcia Guerra, and his group. And we are going to evaluate population rate per animal per treatment, and help me out, Dr. Campbell here. But so at the end of the study, we are going to take birth weights, sex, and number of lambs, and try to see if we're able to see this difference on number of, how many ovulate, but also how many get on what we think the term end of gestation or the term of gestation. And hopefully we can continue this during the summer to try to put a total number of pounds of lamb produced per year.
Exactly, and we're also going to be evaluating some blood metabolites and some hormones as well to see if we are indeed skewing anything within these animals through our nutritional diet. So more to come on that. As I said, we're going to be breeding here in the next couple of weeks. We are going to be on a CEDAR program with some exogenous hormones that will be added as well to ensure that we have maximum ability to get these females bred. They'll be gestating through the winter here, and hopefully come May we'll have some lambs and some good data on the ground for us. So certainly stay tuned for that.
Hi everyone. Hi again. Now that we are here, I want to share some of the results that we got from last year's project. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, just go to this link, and you will see last year's project was trying to figure it out a way to find alternative sources for fiber. This year was okay. Hay was cheap, good quality. Last year, if you remember, was not that good. So we don't know what's going to happen, and having data on alternative sources of fiber, it's always good. So the project last year, we compared a regular management where the animals have hay in a rack, hay in the middle, they were able to eat, with a diet very similar to this one. You can see here two different colors of pellets. The dark one, it's a mineral protein energy concentrate, and this light one, it's a soy hull, okay? Soy hull is a byproduct of the soybean industry, and something that it has a lot of fiber. So the question that we had last year is, can we use it in the long term? And so we fed them during the entire winter. So whenever animals were not on pasture because of the first snow, until the animals were able to go back to grazing in March, they were here the entire winter, and the diet has one treatment hay, and the other treatment is soy hull. And something that we saw is that the animals under the soy hull treatment had an amazing amount of intake. The amount of total dry matter intake was much greater than the animals that have hay as base. That makes the animals being heavier on body weight in mid and late gestation, but when we weigh them 2 days after lambing, the body weights of those ewes were exactly the same. So our question is, okay, if they were heavier during gestation, what happens with, where is that weight loss? The lambs born from the ewes supplemented with soy hulls were a little bit heavier. Now, the extra weight of those lambs do not account for the extra weight of the ewe. So probably part of that extra weight was on the conceptus, on the placenta and the liquid together. Now, the more interesting part was that despite these lambs born from soy hulls, supplemented ewes were heavier at lambing, when we weaned them at 60 days of life, they were lighter. Okay, so there was an interaction over time on those animals that were heavier early on, were smaller at weaning. So, from that, our conclusion is, can we use soy hull? Yes. The first thing that we need to do is limiting how much they eat. Because if you didn't let them eat as much as they want, they're going to exceed the requirements of those animals. That extra energy will go to non-productive tissues like placenta, and that may have a negative effect on the growing of the lamb after birth. We don't have an experiment where we control ad libitum versus a restricted or a control intake on soy host, but hopefully that will come in the near future. And I'm happy to, again, email any question you have regarding this project.
So here we are out in the field of chicory, and it doesn't look like much, but this is the reality of grazing chicory. What's really nice about chicory is that if you treat it as a perennial, it will respond as a perennial. Too often times our producers that are using this type of forage crop like to treat it like an annual, graze it all the way down to the ground and abuse it. But if you take care of it, you rotationally graze it, it will come back for regrowth year after year. Very similar in terms of alfalfa when you think about having to reseed it every 3 to 5 years. But just briefly wanted to talk a little bit about the research that we conducted over the summer regarding lambs grazing on chicory out here. We've already talked about that in the past where we've done delayed weaning out here in chicory, and we saw some really impressive growth rates of about 0.6 of a pound a day on those lambs that remained with their dam out on these pastures. However, it's not to take away from that 0.5 pound of gain that we saw from those lambs that were weaned out on these pastures. For the benefits of what we were trying to do here, we were trying to look at the benefits of a protein bank. And what we wanted to do is use this chicory as this highly digestible, high protein type of forage for our situation. One treatment was where lambs were grazing 100% of their time on chicory. The second treatment was where lambs were grazing 100% of the time over here on our permanent fescue-based pastures. And then for our third treatment was what we call our combination grazing, or those that were grazing in these protein banks where they spent 2 days over here grazing in chicory, and then the next 2 days they were grazing over on the fescue paddocks. A little bit in terms of results, for our lambs that were over here on our chicory 100% of the time, they ended that 56-day grazing period at about 83 pounds. Those lambs that were doing the back and forth or our combination grazing were intermediate at about 74 pounds. And those that were on our fescue pastures were the lowest gaining lambs, where they ended with a weight of 67 pounds. Those lambs that were 100% of the time out here on chicory had about 0.35 pounds a day in terms of average daily gain, 0.2 a pound per day on lambs that were going back and forth, and not even 1/10 of a pound for those lambs that were out here on our fescue paddocks. So therefore, it does demonstrate that if we have a lot of pasture, and I know a lot of people here in Ohio do have it, of pastures that are of low quality, low digestibility, we can utilize some of these highly digestible, high protein type forages to get us through that summertime period in feeding our grazing animals.